erase erase for October 2nd, 2021. I'll start off by reading the mission statement. Racism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show we are committed to treating fellow human beings of all colors with love and respect. Join us. Okay. We'll start off by going around the room and, well, around the screen actually, and introducing ourselves. And then we'll come back and go over the rules of the meeting. I will give a little brief reason for why I picked the topic, and then we will begin. Okay, well, I'll start. I'm Nancy. I'm your facilitator for the day, and I started coming to Erace in June of 2007. Okay, Nora.
Hi, I'm Nora. I'm in Austin, and I think this is my maybe 6th meeting, and I learn a lot and enjoy it, and that's it.
Thank you. Bill.
I'm Bill Ives, and I've been coming to Erace for maybe 5 years now, with Cindy, who just showed up. And I learned something every time. And thanks, Nancy, for an informative article.
Thank you. Cindy.
Thank you. I'll go to my own computer in a few minutes, but at the moment I've lost my coffee, so I have to solve that problem.
Okay.
Glad to see you all, and I'll join you momentarily. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Cindy. Marion.
Good morning, everybody. Again, and to those that I haven't seen, I've been attending the Erace discussion since 1993. And hopefully we'll be able to continue for another 28 years.
Thank you, Marion. Marva.
Good morning. My name is Marva. I've been attending Erace post-Katrina, and I've learned something new every weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lynn Frank. I live in New Orleans. I've attended Erace meetings for about 2 years now. I'm retired. My prior jobs were school teacher, lawyer, and right now I'm a tour guide, but I'm waiting for French people to come back in town because they're the ones I guide. Glad to see everyone.
Good to see you too, Lynn. Louise.
Hi, good morning. I'm Louise, and I've been coming and been a member of Erace for over 2 decades. Now in Austin, but obviously first in New Orleans, and then Katrina happened, so I'm in Austin now. Love the meetings.
Thank you, Louise. Marla.
Morning to everybody. Happy to be here. I've been attending Erace meetings for about a year now, I think. Good to see everybody.
All right, thank you. Phyllis.
Morning, everybody. I'm Phyllis, and I've been coming to Erace since 2008 when I moved to New Orleans.
Okay, thank you. Glenn.
I'm Glenn Abdul. I've been coming to Erace since 1994. I'm glad to be here this morning.
Thank you. Okay, I had a little housekeeping to go over before we get started. I like everyone to mute themselves, all right, because background noises carry and can be disruptive when people are trying to speak. So if you mute yourself, down at the bottom of the screen, there's the mute microphone. There is the stop video, little camera that you can turn off your camera. There is a participant screen. It shows you who's in the meeting. You can also change your name there if you'd like. There is the chat box where you can chat and put information in. And there's also the leave button if you, for some reason, need to leave and then get let back in. Where'd Beatrice go? Did she go to her meeting? She must have. Okay. So also, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we raise one finger to get on the list. Move it around, okay, so that I can see you. If you want to ask a clarifying question, you raise two fingers. Move it around so that I can see you. Okay. We will go in order. You speak in order of the list. Occasionally, I will go through the list and let you know who's on the list and what order they're in. Please keep your comments to roughly about 2 minutes. Be respectful of the speaker. No personal attacks, no name calling, no side comments to others. If at any time I call point, there's no back and forth conversation. And if I call point of order, that means everybody stops talking and then we return to the list. Okay. Clarifying question is when you didn't understand what the speaker says and you need them to, could you please explain further what you meant by, or I didn't understand what you meant by. It is not to make a statement yeah, to the speaker. Let's see. All right, we will go until roughly about 10:15 and maybe 10:10, it depends. And then we will have a wrap up where you get to voice your final opinion, your final thoughts. Please take a minute for that. If you haven't spoken at all during the meeting, you can take a full 2 minutes. Okay. Okay. And we are recording this meeting. It will be on YouTube after the meeting. Phyllis will post it. So the reason that I brought this article, well, for a couple of reasons. One, I know we do have some people here from Atlanta, although Beatrice isn't here right now. She really did have a lot that she wanted to say about this. But I remember the history of the little town that I grew up in New Jersey was initially separated from, it's in Essex County, New Jersey, and where Newark, New Jersey is located. And originally it was the Orange, New Jersey. And it began to separate off different sections of Orange, New Jersey. It started to become East Orange, New Jersey, but more so the West Orange and South Orange, New Jersey were predominantly white and wanted to separate themselves from the predominant Black, East Orange, and Orange, New Jersey. And so this article just kind of brought back memories of that. I mean, all this happened before I was born, but in reading the history of the towns, they're called townships. Reading the history of the townships, those were the reasons for all these little sections and divisions in the county. And so I thought this article at this particular time would be timely. And also some of the issues in the article are some of the issues that actually do face, I think, Orleans Parish, because Algiers is always threatening to succeed from Orleans Parish and form their own jurisdiction. And monetary issues, the tax base and different things that affect the city's ability to be able to run themselves. So I thought this article was interesting. So that's why I brought it. So did I leave anything out? I don't think so. Okay, the list is open. All right. Thank you, Lynn. Okay.
Well, I never like to hear about little communities that want to break off and keep their tax dollars for themselves, because they wouldn't even have a reason to exist unless they were parasites to the big city of Atlanta. They don't have a Falcons team. They don't have the Fortune 500s. They want all the benefits of the big cities, and they don't want to help pay for them. But this article had a very, very good sentence at the end. It's talking about communities in which governments overinvest and communities in which people underinvest. And the reason the so-called ghettos are underinvested is that they are seen what this article calls a lens of a stereotypical lens. In fact, I'll read the sentence. Part of why it is so challenging to pursue humane policies that can uplift people in high poverty areas is because we apply a lens of presumed thug instead of presumed citizens. We need to care for all of the people, and we would have a more unified and more civic city. And the article also says, racial segregation is really the core cause of racial inequality. You cannot zero out racial inequality in a highly segregated society. And so I'm just furious to hear that there are 10 little bedroom communities around Atlanta and 4 more want to join the band.
Okay. Thank you, Lynn. List is open. Phyllis?
Well, I didn't fully read the article, I just scanned it, but it seems like this is like the new version of white flight. You know, they're not moving out of the big city to a suburb. They just want their suburb to not be associated with the big city. Wow, it's, yeah, everything Lynn said, 100%. And who do they think they are? And really though, Lynn, nobody needs the Falcons. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Okay, that's it. Okay, I have Bill and then I have Marla. Anybody else? Greer? Okay.
Of course, those rich people in Buckhead, they drive into Atlanta. That's where they get their livelihood. They don't want to have responsibility. They get their rich income from Atlanta, but they want to be away from it. I want to briefly read to you something that Walterine posted, and we really miss her. She said, the biggest thing I learned from an indigenous elder of Cherokee descent, who reminded me of the difference between a Western settler mindset, quote, I have rights, and an indigenous mindset, I have obligations. Instead of thinking that I am born with rights, I choose to think that I'm born with obligations to serve past, present, and future generations and the planet herself. So if you have obligations, you move towards racial equality. If you have rights, you want it all to yourself with no obligations. It reminds me of the anti-maskers who said, I have rights, I don't want to wear a mask. And the people who wear masks, I have obligation to the community not to spread this disease around. And so this mindset is what's creating these separate communities that want to benefit from the city, but don't feel I have any obligations to share that benefit back with the rest of the city.
Thank you, Bill. And that is very, very, that's very true. Absolutely. good way of looking at it. Okay, next we have Marla, then Greer.
Okay, so this was a great article, I thought.
Cindy.
Thanks, Nancy, for bringing it. After I read the article, like I typically do, and sometimes I regret doing it, I went to the comments section, and I don't know if some of y'all read the comments, but a lot of presumably white people said that they should have called the article "People Moving Away from Crime," just, you know, simply to get away from crime, and that it was a misnomer to call out racism or a racist angle in the title of the article. But I think it all brings us back to the foundation that in order to move, you have to have money, and money is a privilege to have, and the ability to move and the resources and so forth that come with that. This also reminded me of the community I grew up in. So I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, which is like basically just a basic, you know, middle-sized city in Kansas, the largest city there. And there's a community within Wichita called Eastboro. And Eastboro is like in the eastern part of the city, which is always kind of been thought of as the wealthier portion of the city, I guess. And they created their own borough, literally, of like 775 people with sprawling, beautiful homes. They have their own police force, you know, similar to, I guess, Kenner, if you will, but these are all large, high dollar homes. And then when you go through the town, which is only homes and like a police department, it's nothing else. They all completely rely on everything in Wichita for their needs. But they have a speed limit of 20 miles per hour that you have to abide by within their neighborhood. And they have police there who repeatedly enforce the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. And you know, it's all white. I don't recall ever any people of color in that community, and perhaps that's changed now. But the notion of creating that community was based on, we want to separate ourselves economically, but because of disparity, the economic separation, you know, automatically there is also the separation of color as well, just by sheer default and intentionally. Obviously, it's intentional too. So, just an interesting memory that brought up. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Marla. We have Greer and then Cindy
Good morning,
and
everyone.
Marion. Good morning.
Okay. Yeah, this is like a new apartheid. They want to be in their little sanctuary in Covens. And like Marla was saying, where are you going to get your water from? Where are you going to get your utilities from? You want to be a part of something, but you can't provide everything that you need to be actually excluded. And that's basically what they do. They're still going to benefit because they have to go outside of their community. Their kids are going to, if they don't have their own schools, they're going to have to go outside for school, because everybody may not be able to afford private education if they have their own school there. And this is the biggest part of that. When they do that, I wonder, do white people who probably said that they were running away from crime, I wonder if they thought about they running away from you too, because you too are left behind when they leave and they cut themselves off. And a lot of people found out how that was when apartheid ended. People who had money left, or people who had money still had their own place in South Africa. But at the end of the day, the ones who didn't have it are now living like the poor Blacks that had to live by the law of apartheid, where they couldn't live where they wanted to, where they living in shanty towns. This is bigger than just Black and white, but nobody's seeing it beyond that, because poor whites are being left behind too. But I guess in their whiteness, they don't see that either. Thank you.
Thank you, Greer. All right, next we have Cindy. You're muted, Cindy. You have to unmute.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm interested, I grew up in the Carolinas, several different towns, and been in New Orleans 50 years. It's interesting to me how different parts of the South and even different parts of the city have quite different degrees of residential segregation. It fascinates me, but I guess it's just the way it is over time. In the Carolinas, when I was growing up, neighborhoods were so distinct and so obvious. It was almost like there was a line drawn, which is not the case. There wasn't a line, but it was very discriminating in its application. Also, the reality of the economics is amazing how strong it is. That's changed a lot in that neighborhood a few years ago. There's much more mixing now, economically and racially. Social class has sort of shifted. It has faded a bit. There's still rich neighborhoods. Maybe that's always going to be that way. In New Orleans, I think there's a different history. In a couple of other towns I know, in particular, Georgetown, South Carolina, and a couple of others near there where I grew up. There are, one street will be white, the next street will be black, but now it's all kind of shifted a little bit. And I think that had to do with servants and not owners after slavery, but yes, during slavery, but people that could hire and people that could work. That has made it a little more humane in those neighborhoods, especially now slavery. You can find someone to work on your house or whatever. I don't know. New Orleans doesn't fit any of those traditional stereotypes in my mind. Now, maybe parts of it do. I moved into Carrollton, way up here in Riverbend, when it was pretty much block to block. You'd have to go and look because it was not consistent. Maybe it had been and I missed that, but it's quite mixed. It's economically, there are areas that lower income people compared to, like, I don't live in the Garden District, but Riverbend is.
Cindy, would you like to get back on the list?
I'll save it for later. Thanks.
Okay, all right. I have Marion and then Marva, and then the list is open. Cheryl.
Okay, is it me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I guess you could say I live in a mixed neighborhood. My block is all black, across the street's all black. But if you go around the corner on Wakefield, it's mixed. Just take a few steps. In fact, a young white woman just passed my living room window. Young white people would pass my door every single day. I've only lived here going on, I think, 3 years. I live in an area of New Orleans called Gentilly. And my son and his wife lived here. And they didn't want to leave the house to strangers when they moved away. So I moved here. If you go around the corner, it's mixed. I've seen black and white people talking over the fence to each other. But if you go toward Lake Pontchartrain, it's predominantly white. But I found out on a ride to Lake Pontchartrain, there was this beautiful 2-story mansion, and I was informed that black people live there, but the neighborhood is predominantly white. You go to the next block, they're all white people. But as they say, I see people walking their dogs or rolling their baby carriages that are white every single day. And if I'm outside, people exchange good morning, good afternoon, or good evening greetings. So I guess you could say I live in a rather well mixed neighborhood, but the predominance of white people are young people. And around the corner, I've seen a couple of older white people mixed in with the young and the old Black people. So I think it's a pleasant neighborhood. Mostly, I guess you'd say middle class. It's very quiet. And when an Uber driver brought me home from a hospital appointment one day, he got out of the car. He said, "Oh, this is really a nice neighborhood. Oh, it's so nice." I said, "Yes, it is. I love it. It's peaceful and quiet." But he seemed to have been in awe. Well, I found out on the drive home he was from Tennessee. I think maybe
Marion,
Memphis.
would you like to get back on the list?
If I have some more to say, I didn't know I was talking so much. I just got carried away.
That's okay. All right, next we have Marva, then Cheryl. And Phyllis.
Good topic, Nancy. And I ran across, when I was reading the topic, I came across an interesting article that explains somewhat why the neighborhoods are separated. 5 things you need to know about communities of color and environmental justice. 1, communities of color have higher exposure rates to air pollution than their white non-Hispanic counterparts. 2, landfills, hazardous waste sites, and other industrial facilities are most often located in communities of colors. 3, lead poisoning is disproportionate, affects children of color. 4, climate change disproportionately affects low-income communities and communities of color. 5, water contamination plagues low-income areas and communities of colors across the nation. It seems as though they won't live next door to us, and if they seem to capitalize on us by moving industries, hazardous industries, to our living communities. Thank you. I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, Marva. Next we have Cheryl, then Phyllis.
Put me on the list.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Marva. That was really a painful list.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, for the article. Wow. I really enjoyed listening to Marion because she talked about one of the things that I was kind of cooking on, which is watching the different ages of these people. And that seems to really be interesting to me. My neighborhood was this wonderful block. I know I've mentioned it to you all, that was mixed. And I moved in as a mixed couple, and it really was nice because that's how it was. And then that's only been 11, 12 years. Now my neighborhood, all the houses, people are leaving their houses that were here for very long times, families that own them. And we're getting these big blocks of these houses that are coming in that are 2 stories. They have a 10-foot yard and 5 feet in the front. And they don't have windows that open, and they're being sold for $1 million or more. Just started happening, like really everything's $1 million now. And of course, there's one real estate agent, I think his name is Terrence Davis. He's actually selling the houses, and he's a young black man. I think he's in his 50s or 40s. And then younger than me. And then there's, but the houses are being sold to white families. And so it's really quickly changing. Then it seems like the older people that are the people of color that are living here, They're rapidly moving out as they age out, kind of, and the taxes are so high. And then I am seeing this younger fraction. If I do see younger Blacks in the neighborhood, some are here to hang out because Magazine Street's here. And then some of them are moving in. And I guess this sounds really strange to me, but they really seem like they're from other cities and different places. But the private school thing and the changes in the homes, this one thing, I was taking a walk just looking at all this in my neighborhood, and a question came up when I thought about being with all of you is I really wanted to know, like, is in New Orleans any better than it used to be, or did we just move it around a little bit? Like, I can't tell.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. I was going to ask you if you wanted to get back on the list, but maybe, okay, Phyllis has a clarifying question.
I just want to ask Cheryl to tell everybody what Bulbancha means on her screen, in case they don't know.
I don't know.
Well, hopefully I have a great description of it. Is this area, for me, what that is this area had so many different tribes that shared it before any colonizers came. And so for me, that's it's like an umbrella word because there were too many tribes to point out, and the history is too unkept and too disarrayed to understand. So the area is called that. And Phyllis, if you have a better definition than I do, I welcome it. But that's why I'm using it, because I used to just say I lived on stolen Chapatulas land.
Okay, thank you. We have Phyllis and then Glenn.
No, I think that's a good, I think it was the original name of this area in one of maybe multiple native languages, because there were so many different people who lived and came here for trade or, all the reasons before it was a city of colonizers. So I had forgotten about that term. There were tours, a bunch of tours going on in the quarter before the pandemic. So what I was going to say was, I think white people within and who live outside of New Orleans, I often see them commenting on Facebook pages, bad talking New Orleans, the education, the crime, the mayor, all the things. And it especially irks me when it's people who don't live here. Because I'm like, well, just stay in your little, house wherever you are, far away in the suburbs, and, mind your business. If you live here, why do you live here? And why aren't you trying to make it better for everybody? Why aren't you trying to get a better school system? Why aren't you trying to improve the streets, for God's sake, in every neighborhood? And I think a lot of the white people who are moving here are younger and are gentrifying, and they don't respect the culture that they're moving into especially when they're moving into the historically Black neighborhoods. There was a video a while back. There was a video a while back of a woman who would illegally block two ends of a one-way street in her neighborhood to have a block party. And one of the Black male residents was confronting her, and she kept arguing with him, and she wouldn't admit at first that she wasn't from New Orleans originally. And she ended up turning around and flipping up her skirt and mooning him. She was wearing a thong. And I'm like, what is in your, and he's videotaping you, and where it's going to go. I don't understand that mindset. I don't understand the disrespect. I moved here. I tried to understand the culture I was moving into. I didn't try to bring my, California, Ohio, whatever's, except for I'm still a vegetarian. But yeah, I don't understand people who just think they're going to come here and have a party all the time. That's not real life.
All right, thank you, Phyllis. We have Glenn, Louise, and then Bill.
Yeah, in Freeport, Louisiana, they have an African-American mayor and an African American City Council. And they got the power of the vote. They got mainly the voters of Shreveport is African American. So the white people that have moved into the suburbs, they want to annex themselves and don't pay no more taxes. And that and what their reasons is that this mayor and city council is spending money in African American communities, and where that didn't happen before. And they're building, structures that community centers and other structures that that people can enjoy in the African American community for the first time. Now, that's their reason for they don't want to pay those taxes anymore. Now, in New Orleans, we have African Americans who want to annex themselves from the city of New Orleans. New Orleans East wants to annex themselves for the reason that they don't feel that the tax money they paying is coming to New Orleans East. So they've been having a campaign for years that they want to annex. So I'm just that's just two sides of the coin I'm giving.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Louise and then Bill.
So just because you were talking about gentrification, we in Austin, there is obviously, well, it goes on everywhere, obviously. When we first moved here, which was just after Katrina, we were looking for a place to buy, and I almost said New Orleans East, the East, Austin, looked like a really attractive place to us because it reminded me of New Orleans. Actually, it reminded us of New Orleans very much. And loads of people were saying, "Oh, you don't want to go live there. No, you don't want to." And we finally drove around and we were like, "Why on earth?" And we realized that they were all racists, and they said, "Don't go there," because that was pretty much a black community in the east of Austin. And we really wanted to buy, but we needed a little bit of a bigger land for a young boy at the time, and we wanted a bigger yard. So we didn't end up buying. But now, after being here for 16 odd years or whatever, gentrified to the limit. And as you say, Phyllis, I think it's Phyllis, young people, loads of young people are buying up these places, and they have no care for the culture, the history. Some of these Latino and Black families that have been there generations, by the way, that were moved off, that's a whole nother story, that were moved across I-35 where they used to live, but that's a whole nother subject. Anywho, gentrification and the properties now are, we certainly couldn't afford it now, even if we wanted to. Hugely expensive, and just changing the face of it a lot, which blows. That was my comment.
All right, thank you, Louise. Next we have Bill, and then we have Beatrice. Unmute, Bill.
Yeah, I was just, the whole issue of gentrification really is a tricky one, because in our neighborhood where we live now was and remains somewhat racially mixed. It's becoming whiter, but there's a section a few blocks from us called Pigeon Town that was predominantly Black, and now it's gentrifying. And
Cheryl.
the people who are moving there, for the most part, are moving there with good intentions, but the result is not good for many of the Black families, especially renters who don't own the property and can't share in the rising house prices. And so the idea of moving to a more diverse area, if you're white, can have negative consequences on the indigenous people who were there. And I say indigenous, like as Louise said, Black and Puerto Ricans who've been there for generations. not Native Americans. And one story, I had a young PT who was talking about her sister who moved to the Bronx, and they're from New Orleans, and they were looking at a place where they could buy a home in the Bronx, and the only place where they could afford was a predominantly Puerto Rican neighborhood. And their white friend said, "You don't want to go there because it's all Puerto Rican." And she said, "No, we're from New Orleans. We love diversity." And so they went there. But then what is the final consequence for how can we integrate without punishing, without raising the cost of things and punishing the Black people and Puerto Ricans and others who already live there, and making it, how can we avoid making it unaffordable? Anyway, it's just a question.
All right, thank you, Bill. Next we have Beatrice.
Nora has a question.
Nora has a clarifying, I'm sorry.
So Bill, just to, you made an interesting statement about the people moving in with good intentions. What do you think that means? What were their good intentions?
Well, I said some are moving there. Some are moving there because it's cheap and they can afford it. But some are moving there because they want to be in a racially diverse neighborhood. And so I said some. So there are people there with all kinds of motives. But the bottom line is that it's less expensive. But it soon will not be. We see the real estate prices going up and up and up, and the taxes going up and up, driving some of the homeowners, African-American homeowners, out of the neighborhood because they can't pay the taxes anymore.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Beatrice?
I want to apologize for being late and also maybe carrying you back to a part of the conversation that you've moved away from if you're talking about gentrification. But what's happening in the Atlanta area with this Buckhead community that wants to divorce itself from Atlanta is very interesting. It's almost daily in the newspapers. And the people who are most incensed and involved with wanting this to happen, this is a very white, very wealthy section of Atlanta, are saying that the crime is so great that they just feel they're not being protected. And if they divorce from the city, they can have their own police, they can add more policing, and this will reduce the crime. And they haven't thought beyond anything. For example, there are schools within the Buckhead area that are Atlanta public schools. What happens to those schools? Do the children now have to pay to go to those schools? Do they become, they don't, the man's name is White, his last name is White, which is so interesting, who has moved from New York and is pushing this divorce issue from the city annexation, says that, he doesn't, there are no answers for those questions. There are bond issues that are old. There are a lot of real sticky issues, but the only thing is that we want to get the heck out of Dodge because we don't think, we're being protected. Our taxes are not being used well. There's so many uncertainties, but also there is the fact that Atlanta is the economic driving force of the state of Georgia. And so these people are not really realizing what they're asking for. Plus the fact is that there's crime in major cities all over the country. And so if you think that by removing yourself from the city of Atlanta, you're going to remove yourself from crime, that is not realistic. And finally, we have to be willing to look at the social determinants of violence and crime and not just think that, well, I'm going to take my ball and I'm going to run away and I'm not going to worry about any of this. It's very short-sighted and it's very selfish. And our legislature is not going to be able to take up a vote on this until the November 22. But there is some conversation about an early discussion, at least it's on the agenda. But it is just so, I can't, it makes one angry to see that people think that when things don't go like I want them to go, I'm going to remove myself from the situation. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just not going to be a part of it. And because I have money, I can do this. And it would be a real hit to the city of Atlanta to lose the revenue. But that doesn't concern anyone. You know, I'm going to take my ball and run away. It's my ball and I can do it. And that's very, very disturbing. It's as I said, almost daily, well, at least once or twice a week, there are columns, either editorial columns or informational columns otherwise about this issue with Buckhead. And it's disgusting, the divorce from the city. So that's my take on it as a local.
Okay, thank you, Beatrice. Okay, next we have Cheryl, and then I see Greer's hand is up. Okay,
You can put me on there.
and Glenn. Okay. Cheryl?
Thank you, Beatrice. That was very good to listen to you speak about this and here. I think it's real interesting. I have to admit, it's kind of a secret because I have clients here. I've been questioning for quite a few years. I can't really afford to live in this place that keeps changing. You know, like one house over now is $1 million house. Down the street, they just sold a house. It's going to be $1 million house. People that own a big department store on Canal Street, they bought an empty lot and they put a house in. They're my neighbors now, and the taxes are just getting to be phenomenal. If I have a friend say, "Oh, I had someone want to fix my fence for me," and I say, "Oh, how much do they charge?" They say, "Oh, $25 per foot," and oh, that's great, you know. I'll have them come over, and by the time they get to my house, it's $35 a foot. And I ask them why, and they say, because you live in this neighborhood. So when I hire work people just to come over, their eyes get bigger and bigger, and they think that I have as much money as the rest of my neighbors. And so I'm really getting priced out myself. So it's interesting. It's like, I am going to have to take my ball and run. My ball got flattened, you know, And this is interesting. And it just, because one of the places I think about moving is Natchez, Mississippi. I really like it there. It's a 50-50, but it's very segregated, but there's a lot of work going on there. The people seem to be very, I'm unsure about it, but it's interesting for me for maybe a short period of time because of the history part. To go, and it's more affordable. That's the thing. There's middle-class neighborhoods there still. So I don't know about all that, and I'm just watching all of it. Bill's question about, you know, Pigeon Town. I lived in Pigeon Town. When I first came to New Orleans, my friend had a house there. One of the things that's real interesting about living in this section of Uptown, like from, I don't know, well, from like the Garden District up, is the Garden District, people have slave quarters in the back of their houses. And so all those people had places for people to live. Up here, we have these really interesting things like down the street from me. My house was a dairy and a car garage plus a residence, right? So it was a working house, like one of that kind of New Orleans style. But down the street, there's like these little tiny places. And those were for the workers, for the people in those big houses, because slavery was over, but they had to create all this affordable housing. And one thing about Pigeon Town right now is the city was starting to do some affordable housing up there. And I think it got highly opposed by all the residents in that area that, you know, had the ability to make noise and had connections, because they said it's going to ruin our property taxes. They're all going to go down. Our properties won't be worth anything if we build it. And you know what? Those are the people that work at CVS. You know, those are the retired people that need a place. It's like, where do they think the people are going to work that work, you know, work in there? They have to drive all the way across town. Most of the people that work at Lowe's on Jefferson live in New Orleans East. I've asked them. They can't afford to live there.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl, if you want to get back on the list, okay? All right. Greer is next and followed by Glenn.
Yeah, this is sort of piggybacking on what Phyllis said. I saw that video where the lady had blocked the block with her car. They had all these white folks having like type of, I guess, party in the middle of the street. They were drinking wine, they had lawn chairs in the street. He approached her and he asked her, why are you blocking the street? Because a lot of the elders who live in the area, it's around Manchu on St. Bernard, it actually was on Durgeon where they blocked it. And he was like, people can't get through here. And the elders of the community that know him, because his mom was dying cold, Mama D. So people come to him for help. And so he went down there and tried to talk to her. She was like, well, you can come in and you can drink wine and all that. And he's like, I'm not here for tacos. I'm not here for wine. Why did you block the street? Do you have a permit to do this? And, you know, and she was like, well, I'm from New Orleans and all that. She got into that. And he was like, well, what part of New Orleans you grew up in? She couldn't tell him anything. And then she got real rude and belligerent. It's disrespectful when you come in a neighborhood and you do what you want to do. And the worst part about this is when the police finally did come out, they gave her a citation or nothing. But you subjugate the people who live here, you spit on the ground and it's a problem. And the funniest thing about this was he turned that picture of him, of her mooning him, into a t-shirt and it was selling. That's it.
All right, thank you, Greer. I'll have Glenn and Bill.
Okay, so I'm looking at Atlanta. So what if these people would win to be able to separate and don't pay any taxes in Atlanta? Their businesses is going to be supported by us. You know, we're going to be spending millions and millions of dollars supporting these people who are working against our best interests. And we don't have no we don't have the economical sense to realize that. We really should have a strong enough economic base if we supported our own business in the city of Atlanta. All our needs. See, you don't have to create no business, just take care of our needs. We don't have enough economic sense to understand that we shouldn't feel so threatened by what other people gonna do with their money. That's my point.
Okay, well, thank you, Glenn. We have Bill next. Leonetta, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did.
Okay, all right, I have you. So we have Bill and then Leonetta, okay? All right, Bill. Unmute. Unmute, there you go.
Yes, I did it. I think we skirted around, not intentionally, the horror of what this article portrays. It is horrible. And it goes back to the thing I first read from Walterine. People who feel they have rights and people who feel they have responsibilities. And there's that dichotomy. People who, you know, several people said Bucktown doesn't want to pay taxes to Atlanta. Well, the rich people in this country don't want to pay taxes to the other people in this country. They want to keep it all for themselves. And it's historically evil and it continues to be. We like to do audiobooks when we travel. And we listened to one called Them, and it was set in Atlanta. Beatrice, do you know the story?
Yes, I do. And I know the area about which it was written.
Okay, well, your memory is probably much fresher than mine, but it was really interesting. It was a predominantly Black inner inner suburb of Atlanta, if I'm correct. And a white couple moved in with the best intentions, but naively unaware of their white privilege, and they wanted to move into a Black neighborhood. Well, things started to change, and there was a Black community organization that was primarily interested in supporting community. And then when enough white people came in, there was a white community organization that wanted to have protection, and it was called the Neighborhood Improvement Association, et cetera. Beatrice, I would love it if you shared some more from that story, because it was a few years ago.
Okay.
May I just, I'll get on the list, but I need to quickly say I read it a very long time ago, and I'm not sure that my memory would be very helpful.
The book is called Them. Them, okay.
It's called Them, and we listened to it as an audio book, but it was originally a print book, I'm sure.
Okay. Let's see if I can find it. All right, thank you. Leonetta?
Yes, I just wanted to ask a question that I hope somebody on this call can answer. There's laws that government can appropriate land for its use and things like that. I know that's in the law. But is there some kind of way that a law can be passed to stop this foolishness? Because it's detrimental to cities. Taking the tax base away from it, people using the city to make their money and to do what to make a living, but then don't want to pay to support it. And I just want to know if that was possible. Is there a way that is that something that you, as an activist, I could try to get the legislature to do, or is it state, is it local, is it national, to stop this stuff from happening, because it's happening in Atlanta, Nancy, where this article that you had is from, but I'm quite sure it's happening all over the place.
Okay. I know I don't know, but you're right. It is happening everywhere. The list is open right now, and it's also 11. Oh, Greer, okay. Go ahead, Greer.
Okay, these people want to segregate themselves. Let's say it's solely for crime reasons, no racism to it. But when you segregate yourself, you put yourself away from everybody, then you should be prepared, honestly, to handle everything that comes with that. You shouldn't have to get anything from any of the surrounding community if you want to be set aside. Because at the end of the day, if you have schools, my tax dollars are going to go to that school. If you have a hospital where you live, my tax dollars are going to go to that hospital. My thing is, if they want to do this, I think they should be able to provide every service that's necessary in their community. If you truly want to be cut off, that's it.
Okay, thank you. All right. It is 11:01, and I think we could start the wrap up now. We have no one else that has a comment. And I think everyone has spoken. I'm looking and scanning, and I don't see anyone who has not spoken. So, okay, we're going to move to the wrap up, and we're going to start with Nora.
I just want to say, really like what Bill brought up about obligation versus rights, and it feels so basic, and feels like it, goes right back to our sacred Constitution, and all its flaws. And I wish that we had focused more on obligation rather than freedoms. That's it. Thanks, everybody.
Good point, Nora. Very good point. Marion?
Thank you for this topic, Nancy. If you pardon me using this old cliche again, but at the end of the day, we are all human beings and we all deserve to live in comfortable environments. Every single human being in this country, in this nation, in this world, in this city deserves to live in a comfortable, peaceful environment. And it shouldn't matter about the color of your skin. It's all about people being treated as human beings and having a right to live wherever they want to live comfortably and in peace. Good discussion, everybody. Thank you for your comments, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Marion. Marva?
Great topic, great article, great discussion. I like when you can bring the past history with the current things that's going on, and we can discuss both history and current events. Thank you. Great
Okay.
discussion.
Thank you, Marva. Lynn? Unmute, Lynn.
There were a couple of points in the article that haven't been mentioned so much. If I can just look at my notes for a moment. When they're talking about residential caste and the separation of neighborhoods or areas of a town into poor or people of color and the white and the privileged. And how do they keep them separated? If Bucktown is not going to have crime crossing their borders, well, it's over policing. They're going to put people out on the street and they're going to have surveillance. And so that will just exacerbate the problem of people not getting along in Atlanta. And it also used the term opportunity hoarding, the best of everything, the best grocery stores, the best schools, the best infrastructure. We have the money and we get all the good stuff. It's really heartbreaking. I guess that's all. It's a really thought-provoking article, and thank you for bringing it, Nancy.
Thank you. Leonetta?
Yes, Nancy, this was a good article. I don't know why the people in Bulkhead don't think that the criminals could go steal a car and come and do whatever they want to do and leave. I don't understand why they're not thinking that far. But anyway, I guess that's another topic for another meeting. And like I said, I just hope that somebody on the panel might have some could see if that's maybe that's something I need to look into myself and see where you can stop this. Is it local, statewide, or something national? Thank you, Nancy.
Okay.
It was a good article. It got me thinking.
Okay, thank you. Cheryl?
I came in a little bit late and I apologize. I'm finding Saturday mornings challenging to get everything done. It's my day off after a work week, so I apologize for being late. But I didn't know if Marva maybe told us how her testing went, and I just want to continue to wish her really well with all of that, because you mentioned that last week, and that's been on my mind, and you've been in my prayers. I wanted you to know that. The part that Lynn brings up about caste is really interesting. Yesterday, I drove to a Whitney bank to do something, and they put a new one on St. Charles. I didn't even know they'd done it. I hadn't driven past there. And it was interesting because if you go to Louisiana Avenue in St. Charles, they're starting to build all this big fancy stuff in there. And like Lynn was talking about the caste system, they're building the structure, I guess, for the people that they're going to be living there as they gentrify, you know, coming down from uptown all the way down. They're hitting Louisiana Avenue now. Thank you for the great discussion.
Thank you for joining us. Cindy. Unmute.
For me, the big the neighborhoods, and there are many different distinct neighborhoods. It'd be interesting to see if there are parallel qualities of what people think of their neighborhoods. I would bet they're similar. It's interesting to see how they work together or not. I need to do more reading. Good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Louise.
I just wanted to address Leonetta's question of what can we do? Is there a law? Is there something? I actually don't know, but I'm pretty sure that there is corruption and greed involved, which would quell and quash any little avenue that there would be to rectify that. So I have very little faith in politicians and local politics, and I have little faith in everything basically. But so yeah, that's probably my answer to that. Great discussion. Great to see you all.
Thank you, Louise. Marla.
Yeah, great discussion. I'm kind of with Louise. I, continue to try to call myself in and out as a white woman, and also call in and call out other white people, just to have discussions and not institute anger and defensiveness and all of the things that I continue to see, that just are very profoundly present in the community at large and in the nation. I mean, you see it on Nextdoor, places where people are supposed to be having conversation about building community, and it is just so divisive. And I try to remain hopeful, and I try to just continue to do the work as much as possible. And thanks for the article. I think it was a really great discussion. Hope you'll have a great week too.
All right. Thank you, Marla. Beatrice.
Yes, first of all, deep apologies to Bill for not remembering more about them. I can see the setting of it in the old Fourth Ward where my church is. I can hear everything, but I'm not able to help and support with, but I do recommend that people read it because it is a well-written book that is fiction, but it does tell a lot about the kinds of things we've been talking about. I think shared responsibility is so important. And as Rabbi Heschel said, some are guilty, but all are responsible. And if we see that as an obligation, then that is helpful. Out in Buckhead, there's a high-end mall, Phipps Plaza, and people, they've now instituted the idea that people under 18 cannot enter without an adult. And they're doing all kinds of stuff that they think will be helpful. This was a good article. It's an interesting conversation. My son lived in Washington, D.C. when gentrification was just, when I went back to Washington after not having lived there in 20 years, I saw people sitting out at restaurants and places where white people didn't even used to walk. I mean, it's just a whole, it is an issue that needs being looked at and thought about. Good article, good conversation. Great to be with all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Beatrice. Phyllis?
During this meeting, I got a text from a woman who used to live in the building I currently live in. She is past retirement age. She moved over to the Ferret neighborhood a while ago. She just texted me that she's going to move back to Raleigh, North Carolina, because Ida was too damaging to her wallet. And she's a single, no kids. She has family there though. And that, you know, I will say since Ida, it crossed my mind too. Like, do I need to think about when I'm older, can I live in a place like this where probably once a summer or more, I'm gonna have to leave? Because I stayed for this past storm, but I regret it. And so I think there's going to be a lot of more changes in our demographics because of people, especially maybe older, somewhat well off. She's not super well off, but people who are able to move other places. I'm not interested in moving back to my hometown. So we got to figure out some other options. But great conversation from everybody, stimulated by a great article, Nancy, and I want to recommend the book Braiding Sweetgrass, which I've been listening to on Audible. Stuff about indigenous ways just keeps coming at me, and that book was just really transformative. I would highly recommend that to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Phyllis. Bill?
Very powerful article, and I appreciate it. And it raises so many issues. And one of the things, if you think of the people in Buckhead, like the CEO at Chipotle, who makes $38 million, but blames the rising prices of their food on the fact that they had to give $1 or $2 extra an hour to their hourly employees. Think about that for a minute. And the fact that the 400 richest families pay 5% less than the average American in taxes. So Buckhead is just following that trend of the rich want it all. And it affects people of color worse than others, but it's not limited to people of color. So very thoughtful, provoking article. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Bill. Greer?
Great article, Nancy. I really loved it. It's interesting that, you know, we always think about rich people having money, but I bet you there are a couple of people who are sitting there quiet because they're on the brink of not being able to afford to live probably in Buckhead anymore. And if this is brought to them, it may be the teetering force that puts them over the top to where they can't live there anymore. But nobody's seeing the bigger picture with this. If there was equity in society, everywhere would be safe. But that's too much for them to even think about. It's like, let me live on my island. We can all live on an island, but guess what? When you're in the middle of the water alone, eventually a tsunami comes. That's it.
Thank you, Greer. Glenn, you can wrap us up.
Well, this article only shows that out of all Americans, African Americans are the most dependent upon the white race. And even though we add to the economy over $1 trillion, we spend over $1 trillion a year, but we don't know how to use it. And we're gonna be crying when they cut us off in Buckhead. We're gonna be crying to go out there and give that $1 trillion to them. That's how economically ignorant we are.
Is that it? Okay. All right. A few things that I would like, thank you all for your comments. A few things I would like to say. This, to me, what I read was about Buckhead wanting to keep their tax dollars for themselves. We can take that money and we can invest it in our enclosed, encapsulated, however you want to put it, schools, police force, fire department. We can take our money and make our community better. We can have better schools, we can have better everything just for us. Like Bill said, we don't want to share it. Or I think it was Bill, it was like, we have rights, not obligations. We have a right to have the best. And this is how we're going to do it, because we can't run anywhere else. this is it. Okay. I also think Greer brought up the point about the poor white people being left behind. Now, if you'd ever seen the movie, I think it's Lean on Me with I can't think of his name. I'm having a blank. I had it right on the tip of my
Morgan
tongue.
Freeman.
Morgan Freeman, that's right. Took place in Paterson, New Jersey. You know, I'm from New Jersey. And that school had to have been based on a high school that I went to. It looked like a high school that I went to, and the very similar things that they showed in that movie happened in the high school that I went to. And so there's a scene in there where he has all the kids assembled in the auditorium, and he points out the white children, because I mean, they're like dotted throughout the auditorium. There's not very many white students left in the school. And he tells them, he said, you know, if you had the money, you would leave us too. You would not be here if you had the money to choose. And I saw that play out in the high school that I went to, just like in that movie. That movie was so representative of my high school experience. If you've never seen it, Lean on Me. And then lastly, I also wanted to talk about Beatrice talking about Washington, D.C. Ben's Chili Bowl. You remember Ben's Chili Bowl? When I moved to Washington, D.C., white people would not walk on U Street at all. Now they have condos on U Street that white people, it has become so gentrified, primarily because of economics. It was cheap to move into those areas, those little row houses that, you know, were basically little shacks that were easily and cheaply bought up for the Washington, D.C. area. I saw that happening in the 70s and the 80s when I lived there and whatnot. Also, there is a TV show called The Neighborhood, comes on CBS if anyone has seen that, which is exactly what we're talking about in this discussion, about a young white family that moves into a Black neighborhood because they couldn't, in Los Angeles, because they couldn't afford anywhere else to live. And that was very representative of what happened in DC in the 70s and the 80s when I lived there. So anyway, it was a very good discussion. I'm glad you all just enjoyed it. And it definitely is something to think about. How does, I mean, also the real estate industry itself. I do work in the real estate industry, and the housing prices are astronomical. They're starting to come down because all the people that could have afforded those high priced houses, they have all bought them, and the rest of the people don't have any money, can't afford them. So they have to bring the price, the housing prices are now starting to come down, they're starting to drop. But it pretty much priced out the average person, particularly minorities. They can't afford the housing prices that as they are today. It's just too much. It is just really too high. And the reason that's driving that is the low interest rate. So what will happen as time goes on is that as the housing prices begin to drop, the interest rate will go up. So now you're going to have a very high priced house that's probably going to be upside down because you're not going to be able to sell it for what you paid for it. Okay. So that's down the road, but that will eventually happen. So Phyllis, do you have any announcements?